Unit 2, Learning Targets 4 and 5. Learning Target 4, we are now going to graph a line in standard form. Again, Learning Target 5 is graphing those vertical and horizontal lines. We're just going to look at them today in standard form instead of slope-intercept form. So let's start by talking about what standard form is. Standard form is always in the form A times X plus B times Y equals C, where A and B are two coefficients, okay, because they're multiplied by a variable, and then C is a constant. In standard form, you might have a subtraction sign between the two coefficients and variables. You might have a negative AX. These coefficients can be negative or positive. The C can be negative or positive. A or B might be a fraction, so it might be something like X over 2 plus Y over 3, something like that. So the coefficient, the number in front of the variable can be, it's multiplied, can be multiplying or dividing there, but in between the two variables needs to be either addition or subtraction. We call C the constant, and we call these the coefficient. A and B are coefficients. So if you want to get that down, C is the constant, A and B are the coefficient. Now, the reason we would use standard form, sometimes, like in the examples we've been looking at, distance over time, money over time, that kind of stuff, makes sense to have like a starting value and then you get so much more each time. You have that pattern. But if we think about something like the number of legs of different types of animals. So like let's say there's 450 legs on a farm, okay? And those are made up on the farm. There are chickens and there are pigs. And I might be giving away an example later in the note sheet. But on the farm there are chickens and there are pigs. So 2 legs are going to come from each chicken. Let's say there are X. 2 and 4 legs are going to come from each pig. Okay, and notice I almost said Y. We can use, I almost said P for that. You can use that too. We could say 2 legs from each chicken and 4 legs from each pig. And you'll see equations set up like this. And they are linear, okay, because we can get these into Y equals mx plus b form if we'd like to. But they are linear because these coefficients make a straight line, and we'll see how that happens as we go through this, okay? The best way to solve or to find or to graph these, and that's what the learning target is, the best way to graph standard form is to find your 2 intercepts, okay? Now let's talk first about what is a Y-intercept. Write a quick definition. What's the Y-intercept here? Okay, and so the Y-intercept, if you remember from the videos before, is the Y value when X is 0, right? When X equals 0. So to find that Y-intercept in standard form, all we're going to do is make X 0. Well, now, regardless of what A is, what's anything times 0? 0, right? So when you plug in 0 for X, then you're going to be left with BY equals C, and then Y is just going to equal C divided by B. Okay, so for any circumstance there, so for the 450 equaled 2x plus 4y, all we'd have to do there is plug in 0 for x, so 2 times 0 is 0, and then we'd have 450 divided by 4 would give us y, and that would be if there were 0 chickens, how many pigs would there be, okay? So in the same way, we can talk about the X-intercept. Just from what you know about a Y-intercept, what do you think the X-intercept is? Write that down right here. Pause the video and write that down. Hopefully, you kind of guessed that the X-intercept is the X value when Y is 0. Okay? So if we plug in 0 for Y instead here, oops, that's not an eraser. we plug in 0 for y, then b times 0, regardless of what b is going to be 0. And then you're going to have ax equals c, and then x will simply equal c divided by a. Okay? And if this were multiplying, if we had a as a fraction, then we could multiply on both sides instead of dividing on both sides. But you guys know that from solving equations, so you'll be able to manipulate that because you have that prior knowledge from Unit 1. But if we think back to that number of legs at a farm, 450 equals 2x plus 4y. If we plug in 0 for y this time, well, 4 times 0 is 0, so that goes away. So 450 divided by 2 would equal x. That would be the number of chickens there would be if there were 0 pigs. Okay? So that's standard form, and that's how we're going to graph it, is we're just going to find 2 points, because all you need to graph a line is 2 points, right? So that's what we're going to do, and we're going to take a look at some examples. Excuse me. So to do this, we're going to look at, and I should have labeled these. I'm going to label them as we go. We're going to make this A, and this is going to be line B, and this is going to be line C, and this is going to be line D. Okay, so we're going to start with example A. First, all I'm going to do is find my X-intercept and my Y-intercept, okay? So let's first make x 0. If x is 0, then 9 times 0 is 0, and I have 3y equals 18. If I divide both sides by 3, then I'm going to have y equals 18 divided by 3 is 6. So that means my y-intercept is 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm going to have a point there on my line. All right, now getting away from that, let's find my x-intercept by making y 0. If y is 0, then 3 times 0 is 0, and we have 9x equals 18 divided by 9, and x equals 2, right? So I'm going to have a point here at x equals 2. When y is 0, x is 2. Okay, so now that I have 2 points, 2 points make a line. Oops, that's a square. 2 points make a line, so I can just draw a line through those 2 points. And that's it. We used to teach this as to graph these lines. We used to require students to manipulate to find y equals mx plus b. But we've decided that that's not as valuable as just being able to plug in these two things. It's a lot easier to just plug in your x and y coordinates. You guys know if you wanted to solve for y, we've done this in Unit 1. We did the whole manipulation thing. You would minus 9x from both sides and divide everything by 3, and then you'd have a nice y-intercept. You'd get a y-intercept of 6, and you'd go down 3 over 1, and that would be your pattern. That's fine. But I just feel like this is easier. So this is line A. All right, let's move on to line B. I'm going to write it down here. We have 3x plus 5y equals 15. If I make x 0, then 3x is going to be 0. I can divide both sides by 5, and y is going to equal 3, right? So that means my y-intercept is 3. And then let's erase this here. If we make y 0, so if y is 0, then 5 times 0 is 0, and we have 3x equals 15. Divide both sides by 3, and just the opposite, x-intercept is going to equal 5. So my x-intercept will be there. Again, I can just draw my line right through, and I can draw these lines all the way through the graph if you want to, and that's going to be line B. All right, moving on to line C, we have 4y, and notice I just kind of tricked us up, put y first, minus 5x equals 25. All right, so what are we going to do here? Well, let's first start when y is 0. So y is 0, then 4 times 0 is 0. So then we have to divide by a negative 5. Divide by a negative 5. And x equals negative 5, because 25 divided by a negative 5 is negative 5. So my x-intercept on my x-axis is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, negative 5. All right? Now let's go back here. And if you can see what I'm seeing here, this is going to turn out not so pretty when we plug in the other one here. 4y, let's say x is 0, so that's going to cancel. And so 4y is going to equal 25. Well, then I have to divide by 4, divide by 4. And what I'm seeing here is that when I made this note sheet, I didn't make this one pretty. So let's divide 25 by 4 to see what our decimal will be. 6.25. That's not that bad. So 6.25 is going to be our y-intercept. So this was 6. So right up there, about half a half. And that's going to be our y-intercept. And that is line C. All right, one more example. We'll work on line D here. We have 3y minus 2x equals a negative 12. Okay, if y is 0, then 3 times 0 is 0. We're going to divide by a negative 2, divide by a negative 2. Negative divided by a negative is a positive, and x equals 6. So our x-intercept is 2, 4, 6 right here. And then if we undo all of that, we're going to plug 0 in for x and see what y will be. So 3y, if 0 is x, then negative 2 times 0 is 0. So 3y is going to equal negative 12. Divide by 3, divide by 3, and we have a y-intercept of negative 4. So negative 1, 2, 3, 4 is going to be that line. And there's our line there. That is line D. Now, again, I want to stress that this is what I've discovered and what we've talked about being the easiest way to do this. Plug in 2 points and draw the line. We could manipulate these to solve for y. So if we were going to manipulate this last one here, we could add 2x to both sides, right? And we've done this. We'd have 3y equals negative 12 plus 2x, and then divide by 3 by everything. And we'd have y equals negative 12 divided by 3 would be negative 4. And we'd have 2/3 as our slope. So let's check that. Our starting point is negative 4. We go up 2 over 3, up 2 over 3. It's the same thing. These are all linear equations, so they all make these lines. They're just given in different forms, okay? And usually the difference in the forms comes with the situation, comes with the real-world problem, which we'll get to. But before class, I'd like you to practice create 4 equations. So create 4 standard form equations. Challenge yourself with negatives and fractions, and then graph each of your equations by finding those y and x intercepts. Again, leave this second graph blank so that we can do some in-class work with it.